queen is right up here. She's got a red dot, so she should be right in that area, maybe behind this. But I think she's crawling that way. If you see her, oh, there she is. See her right there with the red dot.
Yeah. That's a queen, huh?
Yeah. So the beekeepers, there are 5 colors we use, and they rotate over a 5-year period. So this year it's red. Be red again.
So all beekeepers do the same. Oh, yeah. That's interesting.
So it's red this year. Next year will be green, and then so we use red again in 2028, and that helps us age the queen, and we know exactly how when we need to replace her. And the queens will live 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
So unless the beekeeper decides that the queen's not doing a good job, then it's sort of off with the queen,
Yeah.
and we'll replace her. Or the bees will do that.
So how do you guys just buy a queen somewhere typically to start a hive?
Who raise queens, and a lot of guys do. They do genetic, and they will do artificial insemination on queen bees to get the best traits.
So can you actually raise a queen bee then, specifically the bee for that purpose?
We have gentlemen here close to Columbus we buy queens from that they can. Queens will sell anywhere from maybe $30 to $50 a piece, and they get sent in the mail.
That's not even that much. I'm surprised.
Well, but volume. But the ones with the strong genetic traits can go for more.
Does that? So this is the queen. Then it's moved to here. Is that right?
Yeah.
So physically, do they look different? Or?
They're longer.
A little bit longer.
If you look at her, you can see her abdomen's longer because she needs to get the egg way down at the bottom of the cell.
Right.
So during the prime laying season, which we do in spring and summer, she's laying 12 to 1,400 eggs a day.
Wow.
So the workers live 42 days. And if you have a hive of, say, 60 to 70,000 bees, hundreds of bees are dying naturally every day. So she has to replenish that population.
It's right there.
Interesting.
Now,
I'm really glad you talked to me because I kind of wanted to put a video. I was looking online for stuff about this bee festival.
Yeah.
And I was hoping to find some people that would talk a little bit.
So we offer, we have bee classes in the spring. We offer youth scholarships, and we've also started a veterans beekeeping group where we teach veterans beekeeping, and that's a 2-year course. We take interviews for veterans, and we've got, I think, 24 enrolled this year. Next, it's been all hands-on learning in our bee yard this year and class learning. Next year they'll get their beehives to be on their own.
Nice.
So, but it's a great hobby.
Yeah, I'm actually really personally interested in it myself.
Well, we do have our more information about our classes on CentralOhioBeekeepers.org. And the classes are in the spring. We have the classroom learning, but then what's unique about ours is that we have weekly bee yard sessions from April to September at the Ohio State Bee Lab. It's right there by the cow farm on Main Avenue, back in there. We meet every Wednesday evening, and we take beehives, about 5 or 6 beehives, from installation of bees through the whole summer, and then we finally sell the hives.
You guys have a lot of instances where people will call you, where in
absolutely.
their house they have it, and you guys are the,
we have,
come out and rescue those
if you
bees?
go to our website, it's under services, and we have a swarm list. We have people who will get the swarms out of a tree. We have people who will do what it's called a cutout, where they get in the siding and open that up, and then we have folks who will do a feral hive rescue, which is pulling a hive out of a hole in a tree.
Yes.
So we also get, fortunately now we're getting calls from tree service people, from lawn service people, from exterminators. The exterminators really don't want to kill honeybees, so they call us and we rescue those.
I was curious about that. I've seen some people requesting, like on Facebook groups and things. And I haven't heard you guys mention, but I'll definitely, like I said, we're going to put
go explore the website and look for the services, and our calendar's there, and then we have some other learning opportunities. So when what's interesting is when the hive determines it needs a new queen, they'll choose an egg, and they will, excuse me, they will feed that, egg exclusively what's called royal jelly.
Yes,
That's
I've actually
all
seen that as a supplement.
That's all, and it gives new enzymes and proteins to that egg, and that egg alone develops into a queen. So they will raise maybe 3-4 queens at one time. Those 4 queens go out and get mated. They go to, we don't know how this works, but the queen bees know where all the boys are.
Right.
It's like going to the bar, you know? They go out on dates with the queen. They mate up with maybe 4 or 5, maybe more drones. They come back to the hive and they do it one more time. By sending out 4 or 5, the hive hopefully gets one back that survives. Because they can get beat down by the rain, they can run into
That's
a
what I was
car.
wondering. And what happens
A
if you have
bird can eat them.
What in the instance of multiple queens?
Now,
what
if 2 come back, they sort of duke it out.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if one would move on and start its own hive.
You know, possibly, but when the bees swarm in the spring, the old queen will take half the hive with her. The remaining bees make new queens to buoy up that population. So those swarms you see hanging in the tree, there's a queen in the middle of those.
Sure.
So they're all attracted to the queen.
Wow. Well, again, thank you for all your information.
Well, it's
yeah,
fascinating.
appreciate it.
Your display here is really nice.
Yeah, we have a good time with it. I don't know if I told you this, but if you get me started on bees, I never shut up. But when the worker bee finds a nectar source, she comes back to the hive. The hive's all dark because there's no windows in the hive.
Right.
So she does the equivalent of the honeybee map quest. She goes in there and does what's called a wiggle dance. She gyrates, she shakes, she points a direction, she transmits somehow information. The other bees, they touch microscopic hairs and we think they're sharing geomagnetic or maybe solar orientation direction. But anyway, after she transmits that information, those bees know exactly where to go to get that nectar. So, and that's fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
So if somebody allowed to have a bee in Columbus?
Yes, yeah, you can have beehives in your backyard. There are certain lot size requirements, but we know many people who have 1 or 2 beehives. In our Central Ohio area, we have 200 and some, maybe 250 beekeepers, and I've heard around 900 colonies, but of course that number can go up and down.
What is your website?
CentralOhioBeekeepers.org.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, okay, summertime they can go from nature.
Yep.
What about winter time?
We try to leave about 50 or 60 pounds of honey behind for the bees. We can supplement them by putting in maybe sugar patties, but then we put a quilt box on top to keep the moisture from falling down, and we'll put up a windbreak. And then the cold doesn't kill the bees. The moisture kills the bees. The bees will keep that hive around 90 degrees themselves simply by shaking and vibrating their wings.
Okay.
So, want me to bring this to video?
Thank you.
It just fascinates me how they've evolved to help us, to help themselves through Ohio winters. Now down in the Caribbean and southern Florida, they don't have to keep as much honey for winter, right? But they can keep expanding and feeding brood. The brood is fascinating. The first bees that hatch out inside here are they're worker bees, and they feed the babies. Okay, so they're the nurse bees. We call them nurse bees, and then at day 15. They graduate into wax making bees. So they have little wax glands, and it's pretty hard with the light right now to see this picture right here. But they ooze little flakes. They're like little flakes. The wax is real light. Then we have scout bees. Scout bees go out and find a place to either move into if the hive's too full. They can make new queens. The old queen takes off with a third to half of the hive. The scout bees have found a place to go. Now, hopefully it's not in any of your homes. that honeybees are doing pretty well in this part of Ohio. Out where I grew up in western Ohio, it's such good farmland out there. They've cut away a lot of the fence rows. Well, for example, China has a bad reputation. Not to pick on Chinese, okay? They tend to use a lot of chemicals. In fact, they don't have enough bees left to actually help the human pollinate certain trees, like fruit trees and stuff. They use
Spin it for a little more and then flip the frame and then you'll spin again.
or in other pollinators.
Do you like to spin?
So I'm coming to, yeah.
No, I was just curious what the knot member was made of. So,
Yeah,
okay.
could be a lot
see
of
that.
different things.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
Liquids
empty.
of some-
Oh yeah.
I'm not real familiar.
Versus full.
You could probably Google that and see.
Is that way you spin the opposite direction
So while I
to
got
get
you
it out from
earlier,
the other
talk
end?
about how many flowers
So
bees
it
have.
doesn't
How long does it take one
get
bee?
it from
How
both
long
ends,
does
but
it
it
take
just
after they're full?
helps continue the force.
That's a good
So
question.
when you
It
spin them,
depends on
you
the
put the
source
side that has the
you're
honey
getting.
on the outside.
For instance, if they're
For this
on
one, we're gonna
black
flip the
locust,
frames.
there's so much
So if you can
nectar
kinda
in
see, if you
black
look
locust
in,
flower,
These
they
nubs
may
are
be
right
going
here
there for
from these
Yeah,
two
uh-huh.
before I flipped them.
And they happen, they're so
Because
full.
the emptier
But
side
yet
was on the
some of
outside.
teenier
I see that.
flowers, They may
Then when
have
we
to
flip 'em,
visit several.
They'll end
I
up on
think
the outside.
The number is between 100 and 200 flowers before they're filled. Or pollen, same way with pollen. Now, some of these plants have more pollen, some have more nectar, some have just one or the
So
other.
that's the inside.
So, you know, probably depends on that flower.
I had a question. Some of the vendors are selling bee pollen.
Okay.
Yes.
What is that? Or is that
Bee pollen is the bee's protein. It comes from almost every flower. Like I said, some flowers are only nectar, some are only pollen, but many of them are both.
Okay, yeah. Extrapolate.
With their proboscis.
So Adam got some actual honeycomb. He's gonna give it a try. We got it from the Bee Man Aviaries here at the festival. I have a feeling it's not gonna be as delicious as he expects, but this will be interesting. Go ahead. Are there any little bee larvae in there? It's just like, you know, surviving in the wild. It's gonna be kind of waxy if I had to guess.
really not bad?
Is it sticking to your teeth? That's kind of what I expected from it. Let me give it a try. All right.
Let's see, man.
It's pretty good. You know, it makes like, remember that gum when we were kids you used to get? It was like wax.
Yeah,
Had a little bit of flavor in it. That's what the comb reminds me of. It's like that old chewing gum we used to get. No, that's a wax. That's good honey though. I will give compliments to Bee Man Aviaries. But that wax is good for you. I noticed Adam's spit his out. I don't want to gross everybody out, but you do end up with like a little piece of like a hard wax. Looks like a candle wax. But supposedly that's healthy.
after day 4 or 5 or 6, you really start feeling bad. It's the same thing with them. If they got a disease or something that doesn't show up until later on down the road, and by that time it's a lot of times too late to do anything. The other thing that happens sometimes with bees, they'll lose their queen in the early winter. And if the queen dies in the midwinter, then there's nobody to kind of keep the cluster together and going, and typically they die out before spring if they lose the queen. And if they lose the queen in the winter, there's not really much you can do. That's what we try to do.
By raising bees?
I got to admit, these girls are very nice. They're super nice. They've been very good to me. They're gentle. So I want to treat them just the same. Not slam the frames around and make a lot of noise and shake them around. See, one's just crawling around saying hi. She's not really wanting to sting. She's just saying, hey, what are you? Shake them right off and you're good. Then we can kind of close the lid. So that's how we do it. We put the lid back on them. Like we're on these hives, we just rebuild the hive, put the lid back on, close it up, and we're done. Any questions? How do we treat for mites? There's lots of different methods we use. We try to, the mites duplicate during the brood cycle. So the adult mites will lay eggs in the young larvae. And what they'll try to do too sometimes is break the brood cycle. So the mites lose the cycle of laying eggs and then the adults die out and there's no new ones to replace them. There's chemicals natural chemicals we can put on to treat them, or there's some synthetics we can put on them too. But it's all these things, it's just, none of it we really like to do, but for the survival of the colony, we got to treat them a little bit, because that's one thing for sure. Typically, if you don't treat them, chances of seeing the hive in the spring is pretty slim.
Have you had any experience with those murder hornets we saw on the news that were killing bees?
Have not seen murder hornets in Ohio.
Okay.
The ones they had on the West Coast last year, they claimed they found that colony and wiped it out. We hope so. The other ones, the Asian yellow leg hornet they found in Georgia. One report I've heard, they think that was an isolated hive that they found.
Right.
And got it too.
If the queen happens to die, what happens to the rest of that colony?
If it's in the middle of the winter, they pretty much die themselves.
Do they?
Yeah. They've lost that cohesiveness because the queen's gone.
Do they ever disperse and go to another hive?
Not in the winter.
But they would in the spring?
In the summer and spring, typically not. Some of them, you can't say there's an absolute never.
Right.
Some bees will leave, but more than likely what happens, I was telling somebody the other day, something happens to the queen, okay? If there's young eggs and young larvae in there, the bees will try to make a new queen, and they're successful, and they know how to do that. What happens is that when the queen hatches and she goes out for her mating flight, something may have happened on her mating flight and she never returned to the colony. Okay. Either she got ate by a bird, got hit by a car, thunderstorm, she got washed down, hurt her wing, couldn't fly anymore, a myriad of things. If the queen did not come back, then typically what happens is the age of the larva that the group can make a new replacement queen has gotten too old. So there's only a short window in there that the bees can make a new queen.
Okay. And what is the process, just in a nutshell, for the hive to make a new queen? Is it a hormone?
They have to have young larvae, basically larvae that's only 2 to 3 days old, and
then they can
ample amount of that, really.
Is there something hormonally that happens to turn that?
Once they pick the bee that they want to become, or the bees, they won't just make one. If they have to try to replace queen, they may make 5 or 6 or 10.
Oh, okay.
Because they know, okay, the odds, you're rolling the dice, you know, which one's going to be right. But they try to pick the best bees, and they may be all over the place. some may be in this box up here, some may be in a box down here, some may be on this frame over here. There may be 3 or 4 on the same frame. They're banking that somebody's going to make it through that whole process.
Sure.
Now the whole thing is though, they're banking the strongest will survive. So when the queens start hatching out, the first queen that comes out typically will go attack and kill the remaining cells because she wants to be the queen bee.
Sure. Yeah.
So when they've done that, again, everything's aged past the age that they can make new queens. So when that queen goes out, if something happens to her and comes back,
Then the whole
the
colony
whole hive
would decease,
they've
yeah.
lost. That's where we as beekeepers keep an eye on the process and the progress of the hive to where, okay, they may be hive or queenless for a couple, 3 weeks. So we detect that. Then and we know it's past their ability to make one on their own. Then we will introduce a new
one.
queen.
I was
into the
talking
hive
to
with
another fella. He said you guys are using red on the queen bee.
Well,
Is that it changes yearly or?
Yeah, what you're talking about, the marking of the queen?
The marking of the queen.
What that is once the queen comes back, we typically don't mark the virgin queens because that just highlights them to the predator world. So we wait till the queens come back. If she's mated and the colony accepts her and she's working in the colony, then when we find her, we'll mark her. There's a series of 5 different collars that we use. It's a standard beekeeping industry collar. So it just happens that 2023's collar is red. So the queen you saw down at Central Ohio Beekepers,
Yes.
okay, she was this year's queen. So she got a red dot put on.
I see.
And we use that so A, we can find her more easily when we're doing inspections, or B, like if we do an observation like for today's demonstration, it's easier for everybody in the public to find the queen.
Right.
It also helps us as beekeepers when we're searching and going through our hives through inspections. We know and we have marked what color queen should be in there. If we open the hive up and we're expecting to see a red dotted queen and we see a queen but there's no dot on her, that lets us know something happened.
Sure.
Something happened to the old queen,
Yeah.
and they made a new queen and to take her place.
Interesting.
Did they queen baller?
I'm sorry?
Did they queen baller?
We don't know. They were just, we got a new queen. Yeah, they're vicious little critters.
But they make that delicious honey.
Yes. But yes. Now, that's the other thing. What he was talking, did they ball the queen? A lot of it happens with, as beekeepers, we try to induce a new queen. Well, you got to do it real slowly a lot of times because they're looking for a certain scent, a certain pheromone. Now you've got an outsider coming.
Sure, yeah.
So that's why you keep the queens caged and you introduce her inside a cage and leave her there for about 4 or 5 days. We normally put a candy plug in there. So if the bees really like her, they'll eat through that candy plug to get to her and release her.
I see.
But if you would take just a queen by herself and just drop her in the top, if they don't like her, they will gang up on her. They'll sting her to death and they'll jump on her and get her overheated both ways. So, right. So sometimes you see it happen, you can get in there and pull her back out and try to save her for another day or another hive, but sometimes it doesn't work that way.
Well, I want to thank you for your information.